What up, guys? Welcome back to the Mic Check Podcast. This is T Word, the People's Champ here, my co-host Q. We back in this thing and we talking about some boxing.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? So we got some good boxing coming up this weekend, May 20th. And there's a major card on ESPN. But right now, we're going to give the ladies some shine. We're going to talk about the zone. We've got Chantelle Cameron challenging the great Katie Taylor.
Yeah.
Q, I'm going to throw it to you, man. What you think about this?
Yeah, I think it's really just going to be a very historic event. For those that don't know, Katie is obviously from Ireland. She's won an Olympic gold medal for Ireland. But in her 6-year pro career, even though she's become undisputed, she's become a two-weight world champion, the one thing she has not done is fight in her home country, which is almost unbelievable to think about when you think about the fact that she has a strong following in the UK. She's arguably one of the biggest names in women's boxing. And also one of the most accomplished fighters. To not get to have a hometown fight is almost unimaginable. But a lot of that has to do with some government issues, with regulations on boxing matches being held in Ireland. That's been a long-standing issue because of some corruption and things like that with their boxing commissions in the past. But it's a welcome sign to see her getting this well-deserved homecoming fight. But she's not taking it easy. You know, she's taking arguably what a lot of people would consider a top 3 most difficult fight of her career. I would argue that because of the weight differential, because she's moving up in weight for a fight, it may be even the hardest fight that she's going to have of her career. So I'm really impressed by her willingness to take this fight, even though it is a chance that she could have easily had to just have a swan song kind of a fight. I'm really looking forward to this card as a whole, but specifically the main event.
Oh, for sure. Definitely interested in the main and the co-main. There's a few names on there I'm just not familiar with. And, you know, watching plenty of UK boxing, but there's so many different fighters. Like, they keep a good, healthy variety of fighters, whereas Top Rank, you kind of know your regulars and stuff like that. With the zone and some of these cards from the UK, you're going to see a lot of different names thrown at you. But the marquee fighters on this card are going to be good. But the main event for me is going to be good. And I'm not going to pretend like I've done a film study on Chantelle Cameron like I have on Katie Taylor. I studied Katie Taylor because she was matching her with Serrano. So I've done a lot of deep dive on both those fighters. But what it's big on what you said. She's not taking it lightly. And a big part of it is because it's going to be in the home. This is a historic moment for her. This is a marquee moment. This is a linchpin moment that is not necessarily seminal for her career, but it's definitely going to be that prodigal moment, I guess you could say. And I know that the fans are going to really will her to a win, and her skills are going to carry the rest. I'm interested to see, is she going to try and be a showman or a showwoman, or is she going to stick to chalk and do it the way she's been doing it? Be that fundamental fighter who's been very good in a lot of areas of boxing, and the way that she uses her size. I mean, because to me, her physical stature is a big part of her victories. And I'm wondering if she's going to continue to use that to her advantage, or if she's going to try to put on the show and give the crowd what they came for. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think realistically, this fight is one where it could honestly be very, very similar to the Amanda Serrano fight. Not because Chantelle Cameron is a power puncher like Amanda Serrano is, but because she's a strong enough puncher and she's the bigger woman in this fight. While they're both around that same height, 5'6", 5'6.5", and they both have about the same reach. The one difference that will be very evident on the night is that Chantelle Cameron is not a small woman. She's a very thick set woman, and she's going to have a weight advantage in this fight, something that Katie Taylor in most fights is not used to. Typically, she's fighting against women who are very similar in size to her. Whether it's women that have moved up like she did as an amateur when she fought at 130 and moved to 135, or if it's women in the pros that have moved up to challenge her like Amanda Serrano. But that's the one thing that hasn't been as big of an issue in the women's game, because a lot of these fighters, anywhere from 122 to 126 to 130 to 135, a lot of those women are all around the same height and length. It's really just the weight that becomes a disparity.
Right.
And this fight, I think, can be similar to the Serrano fight because of the fact that Katie gets drawn into slugfests from time to time. And that's just a part of her nature. It's a part of her natural competitiveness, which is what makes her a great fighter. But it also can sometimes be to her detriment because her skill set and her advantage is her speed, her quick combination punching, her foot movement, and her ability to get in and out of range at a quick pace. But there are times where she gets dragged into setting her feet and wanting to slug it out. And I think that is going to be exactly what Chantelle Cameron wants.
Yeah.
If you want my pick, and I'll go ahead and give it to you, I think that this is a fight that's going to be a split decision win for Katie, very similar to the Amanda Serrano fight. I think that she gets put in trouble at least once or twice. But I think overall, when it comes to skill, when it comes to combination punching and quality of work, I think that she's going to show that she's just of a slightly higher class than Chantelle. And I think that she wins this fight somewhere around 7-5 to 8-4 on the cards.
Yeah, I'm probably gonna hedge my pick here and say if Katie tries to put on the show and, like you said, get into the 50-50s, it's gonna work to her detriment. It's gonna hurt on the scorecards. I think if she's the fundamental boxer that she's proven to be, like you said, with the combinations and the footwork and the shoe shining and things like that, that impresses judges more often than not, she can win this fight lopsided, in my opinion, because she's going to be boxing versus fighting. And that's a big difference. And I think that will pay dividends for her to be a boxer. Don't get into the slugfest. Late in the fight, you feel like you got it under control. You feel like your opponent is going for broke. Then maybe you do a little something to please the crowd. But early on, rack up those rounds doing the things that you do best and put yourself in the best position to win where you can coast at the end. I think that's the strategy. But again, my hedge is that if she goes in there and does like you said, and she goes in those 50-50s, she leaves way too much in the hands of the judges, and it could hurt her on the scorecards. So going to be interesting to see how that does play out. Anything else on that card you want to point out to the people before we roll up out of here?
Yeah, man, you kind of mentioned it, but the co-main event is going to be Terry Harper is going to be challenging Christine. I'm about to say Christina. Breakus, excuse me, who used to be the former 147-pound undisputed champion in a fight where she's going to try to become a two-weight world champion in the twilight of her career. That's going to be a really interesting fight because while Harper is going to come in as the champion at 154, she's going to be fighting a woman who's going to be naturally bigger as well because Breakus spent her entire career at 147, while Harper has been as low as 130 before, where she used to be the WBC champion before Alicia Baumgartner was able to take that belt away from her. And then you also have to talk about Gary Cully. Gary Cully is probably one of the guys on this card that is a diamond in the rough, so to speak. He's a guy that has a very similar build to a guy, I think of Robert Easter. That's the kind of fighter that he is. Long, rangy, uses a quick jab, a straight right hand, and he has a decent left hook as well. He's about 6 feet tall, very similar body style type to Robert Easter, quick, fast hands. He's going to be fighting against Jose Felix in the I guess the third fight down the card. And that's going to be a really interesting fight because after this fight, if he's able to win this fight clear and well, I think that he gets pushed up into a world contender status, whether you're talking about possibly fights with the guys like Ryan Garcia, or whether you're talking about those fringe level guys like a Jojo Diaz or somebody of that ilk, because I think he's really ready for this now. He's hitting his stride. I believe he's at like 16 or 17-0, and he's well ranked in all the sanctioning bodies right outside the top 10.
Cool. So guys, be sure to check those out. The undercard is worth a view. I will be tuning in once I get done working. So good day of boxing, and this card is set to start at 1 p.m. Central Time. So be sure to tune in early. Main event, I think, Q, you said around 4:30. Probably 4 o'clock is a good time to be in front of the TV.
4 is probably the best time to tune in if you only want to see the main event. But like I mentioned, it's going to be a decent card. Great atmosphere. That's the one thing that I'm going to be really watching for because this is a first-time fight for Katie in her home country. So getting to see how raucous that crowd kind of grows and builds towards the main event is something that I'm really interested in seeing in her first fight back home. But yeah, I think main event is going to be starting somewhere around 4 to 4:45.
That's what's up. So we got about 10 hours of boxing coming up on Saturday, starting at 1 p.m. on DAZN, eventually drifting over to ESPN and ESPN Plus, and then ESPN pay-per-view. So be sure to tune in, come back and check in with us so we can talk about it on Sunday and the days following the fights. But this has been T, that's Q. This has been the Mic Check Podcast. Until the next time, we're out. Peace.